as the Australian kings of Fortnite. They use their twin tuition and raw skill to eradicate their enemies.
Team next to us. I'm gonna RPG. Edit that. I'm gonna RPG. Heavy slapping in. Dead.
They're some of the most consistent pro players around, even making it to the World Cup finals, and they did it all together.
They're genius.
These two ex-renegades are set to take the world of Fortnite by storm. Our story begins in sunny Queensland, Australia, where two brothers decided to set out on a journey that would change their lives forever. These brothers were Jesse and Jordan Eckley, and they had just finished high school. They decided to go traveling together, and it was at this exact moment in time that Fortnite had started to get big. The two had been playing video games for a while, even dipping into other Battle Royale games like H1Z1, but Fortnite was so popular at the time, and the building mechanics were so unique, it attracted them like a magnet. When they set out on their travels, they had a plan. They would come back and then go to university. But instead of sticking to that plan, when they got back to their home in Queensland, they deferred their university placement for a year and instead decided to take advantage of a unique opportunity. At the time, the pro scene in the Oceania region was so small it wasn't even on anybody's radar. But that didn't stop the two of them. The two created a challenge for themselves. Their goal was simple. They would become the best Fortnite pro players in the whole of Australia. If it didn't work out, they would go back to university the next year, but if it did, they could end up playing video games for a living. It sounded like a win-win, and when they entered the pro scene in late 2017, winning was all they did. It turned out that Jordan and Jesse were incredible Fortnite players, and they quickly began to utterly dominate the Australian region. They believed they had what it took to make it to the top, to play among the best players not only in Australia, but the rest of the world as well. So they started to look to join an org. This was their first real roadblock, their first hurdle, and at first, it looked like they were going to fail. Finding an organization to support them ended up being much harder than the twins had expected. Everyone wanted a single player instead of a pair. Organizations simply weren't on the lookout for any duos. Neither twin wanted to leave the other, so they did something completely unexpected instead. Twinsanity. That was their solution, a team of their own design. Instead of relying on the support of an organization, they would team up with two other incredible Australian Fortnite players, Hirsch and Mr. Fresh Asian. Their goal was the same, become the best Fortnite squad in Australia, and then take over the world. Let's go! Hey! To put it simply, their plan worked perfectly. The four players dominated virtually any competition that came their way. Scrim after scrim ended in victory royale for the team. And after a while of playing together, they finally got the attention that all four had craved from the beginning and the attention that they deserved. Attention from organizations that could help propel the team into bigger and better things. This would launch them onto the world stage, but of course, it was never going to be that easy. Joining an organization would be the hardest thing that the X2 twins had ever done. When you look into the history of X2 twins, there's a moment that most people never talk about. We all know that they were signed by the Renegades, but did you know that they almost ended up with the Australian organization Legacy Esports? This organization, which was set up in 2014 specifically to help Australian players, was in talks with the Twinsanity team for weeks, and it eventually reached an agreement and signed contracts to have them as the Legacy Fortnite team. Legacy had gone the whole hog. They had edited a promotional video, they had written a press release which introduced the players, and they were all set to release the news. Then, 3 hours before the reveal, the Twinsanity team manager Sozo changed everything. He told Legacy that Twinsanity had been approached by the Renegades, an organization based in North America that had been so impressed by Twinsanity's performance that they would be offering the team a salary on par with North American teams, and a gaming house based in the US. Legacy was understandably devastated. They knew that Twinsanity had the potential to change the face of Australian esports and pull Legacy along for the ride. But in the end, Legacy agreed to let the boys break their contract and release them to the Renegades. They didn't want to stand in the way of the 4 Australian stars getting their big break, and they knew that they couldn't compete with what the Renegades were offering.
We came to America to play the NA scrims instead of the OC scrims because NA has way better players, it has more players, more opportunities in general, so we're going to be grinding here for the World Cup.
So our squad became part of the Renegades, a world-class esports organization that had the potential to slingshot the Twinsanity players onto the world stage. The pressure had never been higher. The expectations had also never been greater. It was a new era, but one thing stayed the same. Despite that pressure, Twinsanity continued to dominate. The first tournament the four would play under the Renegades name would be the Core OCE Pro League, and it was a tournament that they ended up placing first in with no trouble at all. It was exactly 1 month after the Core OCE Pro League's completion that the X2 twins would face the tournament that really threw their names into the attention of the global Fortnite community. The Australian Open 2019 was the biggest tournament that the Oceania region had ever seen, an effort by Epic Games to bring more of a spotlight into the underrepresented area. This was a big moment though. Jesse would be taking part in this tournament alone. He wouldn't have the communication and skills of his twin to back him up. It was all down to him. And guess what? He knocked it right out of the park.
What does $100,000 mean to you?
It's really good to come out with a win. A lot of practice that goes into it. Been last year scoring really hard. And in terms of 100K, I don't know what it feels like.
He was playing against some of the biggest names in the region. He was even playing against some of his very own teammates, Hirsch and Mr. Fresh Asian, who would know exactly how Jesse liked to play. But he still managed to ascend to the top of the tournament and claimed the #1 top prize. He blew all the competition away and came home from the tournament with $100,000 all to himself. Jesse made this tournament look like nothing more than a walk in the park. He was able to breeze through the first 3 games he played in, coming first and scoring multiple limbs in each of the matches. He was at the top of the leaderboard. Jesse put his win down to the insane amounts of practice that he had been putting into the game, and said that he hopes this would finally get him some recognition for not only himself, but also his brother, since it was so difficult to make a name for yourself in the Oceania region. But there was one thing that they had their eyes on. One championship that would solidify their legacy and truly make their mark. The 2019 World Cup.
Lapix is outside. He can't get back into the safe zone. It's ticking down, and that is going to be the victory royale for Jordan Twins IWNL. And that is how he secured his spot at the Fortnite World Cup Finals.
Just like every other Fortnite player with aspirations of playing amongst the greatest in the world, this was their ultimate ambition. The only chance of playing in the World Cup was by being one of the top 100 solo players or top 50 duo teams in not just their region, but in the entire world. Jordan and Jesse played together in both the duos and solos World Cup qualifying rounds, but in the end, only Jordan made it through to the finals. This was secured in the 7th week of the qualifying rounds when Jordan ended up coming first in his region's tournament. His brother Jesse would have to sit back and anxiously watch as his brother competed against 99 of the best players in the world in the solos World Cup finals. It would be the perfect chance to get the Australian Fortnite scene on the map, to bring back the biggest win in the history of the game for the Renegades. And unfortunately, it didn't go according to plan. Out of the 100 players that made it to the solo finals tournament, Jordan only made it to a crushing 96th place. On the surface, this sounds like a terrible result, and there's no doubt that Jordan was disappointed with his showing at the world's biggest tournament. But when you think about how truly stacked this tournament would have been, his finishing place is still worth celebrating. This achievement was no small feat, which is probably why Jordan was still able to walk away with $50,000 at the end of the tournament. He represents 0.01% of the Fortnite population in terms of skill.
During the World Cup, I didn't really stay level headed. I guess I did until the second last game, where I took an unfortunate death and actually got quite angry and may have hit a wall.
Many competitive players would have let a loss as crushing as that to let them down, but Jordan and his brother weren't about to let a minor setback stop them from achieving their goals. Just 1 month after the World Cup had come to its conclusion, Jordan and Jesse were back at it again, scoring wins in some of the hardest tournaments in the Oceania region. They came first in the Champions Series Season 10 Week 1 tournament and proved that the pair of players were stronger than ever by ending the tournament not just with a first place showing, but by actually winning 5 of the 7 matches they played, putting them as the team that had the best overall average placement of any region in the entire tournament.
Now let's head over to OCE, where Jesse and Jordan, the X2 twins, and their third partner Volks just dominated semifinals, then transitioned that into a finals win as well.
Yeah, so they were able to just basically tear up the region. They won 5 of their 7 matches, and then they averaged a placement of 1.59 across the entire competition.
It was a clear message. The X2 twins were here to stay. Their domination of the Oceania region ramped up into high gear, and they started to win tournament after tournament, champion series after champion series. Their streak of high placements in tournaments has stretched all the way into 2020, not even being affected by their decision to leave the Renegades when their contracts came to an end in November 2019. Even though the X-Twins have been to the Fortnite World Cup and won tournaments with some serious competitors stacked against them, it's easy to believe that we've only seen just the beginning of what these two are truly capable of. They have a distinct, aggressive playstyle, they bounce off of one another with ease, communicating with speed and precision that could only be possible because they grew up together as twins. Could they use that communication and skill to go even further in 2020? Only time will tell, and we're excited to find out.